Here we are. You should be getting nice and dizzy with the Telraam logo. So, as usual, we'll go through a short presentation. You can ask questions in the chat, but because it's a small group, do feel free to just jump in if you want to ask them. We're quite happy to answer them as we go. The idea is this will be a brief presentation, hopefully 10, 15 minutes, depending on how many questions we get asked, but it's to give you an overview. This time, we're quite excited to share some examples, some screenshots of what's happening with the arrival of night count algorithms to the S2s. And some discussion about the beta testing group that we're setting up to allow us to test this in the field to give us more data on the devices before we roll it out everywhere. So here we are. After how long has this been working on, Kris? A few months.
Oh my God. I think I captured the first training material sometime in June or something last year. And then actually the script, I mean, to have the full context, I think the script was ready in some time of October already, but it's the deployment on the firmware which has been like a painful challenge. So, but we're almost there now. It has taken much more time than expected, that's for sure.
Well, yes, the night counts were an integral part of the development of the S2 and the reasons for the development of the S2 as a replacement for our original V1. The original wouldn't be able to do this. So this is a particular, we've been keen to bring it to you, but by the same token, we didn't want to release this until we knew that the data that it was coming back in was accurate enough to give you a decent count. So it hasn't been on until now, so I know it's taken us a little bit of time, but that's why we're doing this beta testing group to double check the data is accurate. So exciting, here we are. First screen, first view. Here we are. It's not that exciting. We have new colors. Well, lack of color, yes. You'll recognize a standard Telraam dashboard. This is the public dashboard with the daily total counts. You'll see that the night counts are now added on top of this. So as you say, all of this will be available to all devices, all S2 devices when it's deployed. It'll also be on the open data as always. The interesting thing you should note here is you'll notice that whilst we normally have 4 modes in our open data, the standard data, which is the pedestrians, two-wheelers, cars, and heavy vehicles, we've added a 5th. So night counts are going to be an additional category as far as the reporting is concerned, at least at this level. What they are a aggregate count of the vehicles that have been recognized by the device. So it'll be combination of cars and trucks. In fact, it's objects with lights. Kris can probably tell you in a bit more detail. In fact, why don't you do it? But how the algorithm works.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here to explain a bit how this works. So it's still camera-based system, so it's still having to detect motion. But because it's dark, there's no infrared, it's all too expensive to do that. So just using a regular camera, what you can see is brightness contrast. So you can see basically the headlights and the taillights from passing vehicles. What we did, we trained a second algorithm, and there's basically 2 algorithms now on the device, one for day and one for night. And the night algorithm, what's changed there is we reduced the frame rate, we increased the exposure time. So for every capturing, you'll get a streak from the headlights. And we basically trained a new model on these streaks of the headlights and the taillights as a single object. Now, this works fine. So the rate of underdetection is actually quite low. But the issue obviously is that it's no longer possible to make any distinction between a small or large vehicle. And actually, as we've tested it on our HQ, bikes with very bright lights will also be picked up as objects. Not all of them, only the ones which are very strong, let's say, And that's why we had to choose to have like a separate category, because the distinction between cars and heavy vehicles is impossible, and there might be the odd bike in there as well as in the classification. So that's important to understand.
So having said all that, that's quite interesting. You'll see this is an aggregate, but what you can see if we scroll to the hourly, or if it'll be the same thing as the 15 minutes, you can see how it flows naturally. It adds a whole extra layer of detail, or those black streaks, which would not have been picked up by a standard camera at that time because they weren't visible. So you can see it does give you a better indication of overall traffic flow on that street.
Yeah,
That
that's
street
the cool
segment.
graph. That's the nice one.
Yeah.
That's where you
Yeah.
can see where it dips, where it switches between day and night model. Now, interesting. Sorry I don't want to hijack here, Rob, but what's interesting here to note is that you'll see that in these troughs, so which are the nights, you'll still see sometimes like the light blue, which are cars being counted. So in this particular location, which is our HQ, there's at some locations still enough light for the light model to work. We disabled that. I think when we launched S2 in the beginning, because we saw that we had like massive undercounts because it's just not light enough. But now it will switch. It will see how it will work on the brightness level to switch between day and night model. So if you're on a light street, like with some illumination, you'll have a mix of detected cars in daylight model, let's say, and nighttime model. What you're seeing here as well.
Yeah, in fact, you can see it in this version, which is the hourly graph. You can see exactly when the camera is switching on or enabling the night count mode in that particular hour. But that there are still cars being detected even in the later hours. So those ones would have been cut off in our original model because we weren't confident enough. Now you can see a total between them that gives you a better idea of the traffic. So yeah, we've got the trends now. You can see that extending those trends into the evening hours and into the early mornings. Hopefully, this is what we'll see on all your devices as well. And so, well, we'll talk about it later on, but we need to test the differences between the more brightly lit streets and the less brightly lit ones to see how that switching happens.
Exactly. For now, we've got, I think, data for 3 or 4 testing sites, but not more. They're already quite different in terms of scope. So and they're behaving as expected. So one is very busy and rather bright. One is very dark and not so busy. But they behave. I mean, the model behaves fine in both locations, and there is no reason for us to assume that it wouldn't work on other locations. But we'll have to test that. So hence the beta test program.
We'll go into the things then. Just a quick note here, you'll see the V85 figure now continues throughout the day, but you will notice that the V85 figure for those nighttime counts, in this case at least, is higher. I suspect we will start to see some trends like that because there are fewer cars, therefore the 85th percentile will be probably a higher speed. But we'll take that into consideration. It's one of those things that we'll need to look at in terms of data analysis, because that's all now changing a little bit now that we're going to have this data available to more people.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, the speed estimate is only available for when the script is in daylight mode. So you will not be able to have speed if you have pure night count. So the speed that you're seeing here is based on the objects which are seen while the device is active in daylight mode. So on this location, it's HQ, where we have had some detections during the night. You can get some estimate for speed, but the sample is like very low. So I mean, it's not perfect. I think it's safe to say that probably we'll have to see that night counts in volume will be fine for the aggregate, and speeds will be really, really tricky. So we'll see. That's something we'll have to test more elaborate.
This, I think, is a very pretty graph too, like the first one. So this is, again, the aggregates for the hours, but this shows the two directions, and you're still getting the direction of travel split, even on the night counts. And so again, you're seeing a lot more data, a more standard, a more natural curve throughout the day. And interesting to see quite how much traffic there is in
Yep.
Leuven at midnight on a Tuesday night, whatever this was.
Yep. It's a busy connecting road. So you can see how it's actually busy during the day. So typically you would see like a peak in the morning and a more established peak in the evening, but now street is very busy all the time. So makes for an excellent lab to test.
So those are the main, just back quickly in case there's any questions, but those are the main screens. We'll obviously be adapting some of the other reports and stuff to bring in some of this extra data, but we need to be getting data from more devices before we can do that, which is why we want to get the test group. Are there any questions from our wide audience here tonight before we move on? In case there's any questions here, we can definitely have more general discussions later, but if there's any questions during the presentation, if we've missed something.
Did I hear correctly that you guys are light testing to see kind of what the minimum light requirement is going to be?
We did that. We did that on a limited set of devices. So we do log exposure and contrast values, and we made some plots to see at what point we have to trigger the night model and what point we can be safe with the daytime model. And I think we'll probably be able to fine tune a bit more, seeing on if you have a bit of wider test data on more locations. This is getting a bit more technical, but we're going to work with the hysteresis. So that means that if you are up to a certain brightness and contrast value, so we use a composite of the two indicators, then if that is above a certain threshold, it will stay in the daylight model. If it decreases beyond a certain lower threshold, it switches to the night. But then it will have to increase back higher up again to switch to days to avoid your flip-flopping all the time. So there's some fine-tuning there as well to be done. We've now fine-tuned it based on, I think, 2 locations that we've tested extensively. We're pretty sure that this will probably be enough for most of the cases, but it's still safer to test more. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So about 20 or 30 beta test users where we're going to push this, see how Telraam behaves, the night count behaves, how this flip-flopping is working. Do we have to change the hysteresis threshold values? We'll have to play a bit. Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is in the use case I'm looking at is tracking traffic through a main street in a rural town that may need to get some power, sitting underneath a street light. So I didn't know if the street light sitting underneath the street light may activate the daylight mode, and then on the other side of that, in rural towns, you get some areas you get, it's not as bright as a downtown in San Francisco or London or wherever. So if there was a minimum lumens required for the camera to be able to capture any movement, that feedback would be helpful.
Yeah, that's
when
good.
Trying to figure out where on the street to put it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Then I'll give more context. So we see on our location where we also have illuminated street with artificial light. We think that's our hypothesis that it switches to daylight model if you have like 2 or 3 cars which are passing by at the same time, so just pushing the overall brightness beyond the threshold value, so it's able to count and to see it. That's what we think that happens. Now, the amount of S2 devices where at night the daytime model is working fine. I mean, there are like 5 or something in the whole fleet, so you really need natural light, so high amount of lumens to have constantly be able to count with the classic daytime model. I think there's a few, but not that many. The thing is, the updated script should be able to cope with that. So it should be able to deal with this episodes of higher lumens and episodes of lower lumens. So it switches between day and night. You'll see what you get here in the graph, which is now in the presentation, like in the hours 18 to 19 and 19 to 20, where you'll have this mix of objects counted as a car. daytime model, and objects counted as a night object, the gray ones. So you should basically just aggregate those ones. To be clear, I think also the flip-flopping almost happens on a per frame rate. So it's really very short resolution. You can flip-flop very fast. If I remember correctly, yeah, I have to ask Peter, but it's not trivial. But it's not trivial, but the important thing to remember for your use case is that you should not actually think about lumens or artificial lighting whatsoever. If you are in a dark street, then at night it will be 100% the night model which will be counting. If you're on a very bright street, you might be lucky and you might be able to cope with the classic existing detection script daytime model. But if it's something in between, then the detection model should be able to cope with it.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the one thing is there's no minimum light requirement because it's counting the street, that's counting the car lights, whether there's light around them or not. So
exactly.
it's the minimum. It only switches it from day to night mode. So if there's no light, it'll still see the car go past. Now let's hopefully assume that the vast majority of people driving past will have their lights on. But given that proviso, that we'll count everything that passes, but it might be just dark or day.
Okay. And did I understand that because it's counting the lights, you won't be able to tell what type of vehicle in terms of heavy truck or just a Kia Sorento or something like that?
No, impossible. Okay. It will just be object. So most likely motorized, obviously, but in our case, we have seen the occasional bike being picked up as well.
Okay.
What I've also seen personally when we did validation testing, and that's something definitely we need to look in when we're going to beta test, is that the night model is more prone to double counts compared to the daytime model, and we think, again, hypothesis, that this might be due to weather conditions or context-specific conditions. I don't know if there's like glass on the far side and you have like reflection of the car light, so you'll have like two objects passing by the same time. We'll count them as individual ones. Or if it's raining and the road surface is shiny, let's say, then you might have a duplication there as well. It wasn't that frequent, and I think we can tweak it still with like acceptance thresholds and so on. But it's something we'll need to check in when we're doing the beta test.
So I'm sorry, Rob, one more question. Just in regards to switching from day to night, have you guys seen in your beta any, to the point of rain and cloud cover, and I don't know where you're beta testing or what, but down in where I'm from, we can get a storm coming in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and it'll turn dark pretty quick. Is that you're not seeing that?
No, that, I mean, you'd be surprised how much lumen even during dusk or a storm. I mean, it's really binary. You can really see it. I mean, there are these 0 to 1 brightness indicators that we're using. They go from, let's say, the lower 10s or 20s to 80 plus in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, and it's really, really short. And you can see some fluctuation during the day, but really not that much. And we have had cloud coverage and darkening conditions and everything. So to me, it was also quite surprising to see that it's like really binary, light, dark.
Great. So partly in the interest of times, because we can still continue some of these discussions afterwards, just want to go a little bit over the timings of the beta testing group, partly because I want to share this with the beta testing group before it starts, and in case anyone else is interested in signing up, there's still some possibilities. So we announced this just over a week ago. The idea is that we want to select somewhere between 25 and 50 different locations. The reason for that number is to get a variety of context, which is different lighting conditions, maybe different countries with different vehicles and different street scenes. We also will have some streets with lots of traffic, some with very little traffic. And we want to run this, with different weather conditions and whatnot. So by covering lots of countries or lots of geographical locations, we might get different things in just the 2 weeks that we're going to be 2 weeks or so that we intend to run this for. So we want as many applicants as possible, because what we will do is we'll select from them, a bit like we do with our network dashboard. So we'll look at everything that comes in. So please apply wherever you are. But we already have the minimum signed up, so it's a case now just of selecting the groups. The process, so you're aware, is that once we've selected them, we will manually, we will set a small group that will get the updated firmware to their device. That is our first test, of course, which is deploying this new firmware to this device. We want to do this obviously before it goes out to the thousands of devices that are available around the world. So you don't need to do anything, that will happen automatically. That's what we do with our the connection. What we are asking is that once that is in place and you know it's started, you won't actually be able to see the data yet on your dashboard, as far as I know. I think the case for at least for the test period is you won't be able to see this data. We will have to be able to see whether the data is coming in. We will need those beta testers to carry out a validation, a manual validation with us. It's a simple process that for about 15 minutes during a time where it's dark, whether you're a night owl and you're up really late or at least later into the evening, do a manual count of vehicles passing so that we can compare that with the data gathered for the same period of time, and then we get an idea. We will use that to match, to look at issues. We will also want to ask you about the conditions at the time. And then there's a couple of weeks to share feedback, not just on the counts, but any other issues you've experienced. Maybe there's some issues with the device, maybe some issues with the display. Who knows? We'll see what happens. So this is really about not just asking you to volunteer your device, but actually a little bit of participation, hopefully not too much. If you do decide to sign up, I will, if you go to telraam.net and click on the blog button on the top, the latest blog post is this beta testing post, and at the bottom you'll see a link to the count trial application form. It's only a couple of questions to tell us about your device. That's basically it. So just to be clear, we've extended it a little bit because we were a bit slow in getting the word out. So it's still open this week and into the weekend, but we will probably start selections on the 15th. Or by the 15th, sorry, we'll start selections on the 11th. So we've got a week or so to go through and check out the locations. We will probably start the deployment around the 18th or so of March, so the middle of this month, so very soon. That, I say, shouldn't take too long. And then from then onwards, we'll be looking at the data for a couple of weeks, during which time we'd like you to do at least one, if not maybe two, validation counts at nighttime, and maybe even a daytime one for comparison, so we can compare the accuracy of your daytime to your daytime counts, as well as the accuracy, the equivalent accuracy of the nighttime to the night count. It'll be easy to send us those reports because it's a form that you can fill in. And if you have any questions or want to discuss it or give us feedback or tell us how wonderful it is, of course, that's allowed anytime. That's what we'll do on Telraam Talks, because then we can share between everybody, make sure everybody's kept up to date. We like to keep things as public and transparent as possible. That's it, really. I will stop the recording now unless anyone has a major question, and we can have a conversation. Yeah.